Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets Podcast Pioneer, with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey, welcome, Carm Capriato here with a very special re-release of a Remarkable Results podcast from November 2016. Yes, it was about a year and a half into my podcasting journey when I met Giuliano Zuccato in Las Vegas. This is a very special and interesting story and a very interesting person. Every time I tell this story, I get emotional for so many reasons. Our story is very unique and transcends over a few years. Now, thank you for your continued support as a podcast subscriber. Give us a like and a 5-star review if you can. And also thanks to our partner, Napa Auto Care. You know, it's no secret that we're facing a technician shortage, but rest assured, Napa Auto Care is addressing that one tech at a time with your help. The free 2-year apprentice program offers a variety of training to produce a technisuan through 9 stages of curriculum, earning 4 ASE certifications throughout the program. To learn more, members can visit member.napaautocare.com or contact your servicing Napa Auto Parts store or sales rep. You know, I decided to relaunch this episode with Giuliano because of the unique story that sits behind the Mustang man. But also, when I tell this story to people when I'm at conferences, I always say that I should re-release this episode, and so now I have. So I met Giuliano at an AVI luncheon at the Apex 2016. He told his story about working in the design studio at Ford with a team of clay sculptors who helped bring the iconic 64 Mustang to life. Now, I thought about his story and I realized we needed to tell it. We became friends and he agreed. Giuliano Zuccato at the time of this interview was a spirited 84-year-old, and he weaves this incredible story as a young man emigrating from Italy to Canada and being faced with a very serious illness that ultimately changed his destiny. His tenacity to practice his craft got him a shot at Ford. Giuliano brings you inside the Ford Design Studio. He shares his memories of Henry Ford II, Lee Iacocca, and other project leaders, designers, and sketch artists. It was a team effort, and you'll get a sense of how it all came together. Listen to Giuliano speak to the talent of the sculptors as they took the engineering drawings, sketches, and design, and they brought it into 2 dimensions and turned them into a 3-dimensional model. Now, Giuliano and I became close. After the interview, we spoke weekly. He had more energy than most 60-year-olds at the age of 84. And he shared with me his ideas and goals about how to tell his Mustang man story. Hear his spirit, many and unending ideas, his positivity, drive, and courage, and his need to inspire through storytelling. You'll hear all that in the episode. Now, one day in 2017, he called me from Florida. His home's in Detroit. He was out at a Mustang Club event signing autographs, and he was with his people. He told me, "Hey, Carm, I'm not feeling well," and I was heading home. Soon after, Giuliano discovered he had glioblastoma stage 4. Needless to say, I was crushed for him and his many fans because he had plans to travel Route 66, write a musical called The Mustang Man, and so many other projects he just couldn't get done. You'll hear about his dreams in this episode. Knowing his time was short, I went to his home to record our 2nd episode. He was challenged with chemo. However, after hours of working on the episode together, we got it done. And he talked about his work on the Chrysler Crossfire at a castle in Italy, and his Horse of Destiny Foundation he speaks to a lot. You'll find that interview on our website, remarkableresults.biz, episode 243. I'll put the link in the show notes for you. Knowing what the ultimate outcome was going to be, it was one of the hardest interviews I did at Giuliano's home. He was able to celebrate his 85th birthday before he passed. In 2017, I submitted this Giuliano 64 Mustang interview to the Motor Press Guild, and I won the top podcast of that year. Ann and I went to the presentation at the Peterson Museum in LA to receive the award. Listen to Giuliano's story from woodworking to emigrating to Canada, getting tuberculosis of the bone, and discovering his ability to sculpt. Listen to his tenacity to find work in Detroit and his brilliant mind as he dreamed of XY digital printing back in the day, which now today we call 3D printing. Even if you're not a car buff or a collector, you'll enjoy hearing the story of a man and his role in creating one of the most important vehicle icons of our lifetime. Take this walk with me down my memory lane and learn about Giuliano's legacy with the iconic '64 Mustang. Enjoy. A warm welcome to Giuliano Zuccato. Now, Giuliano and I met at Apex 2016, and Giuliano, you spoke at a luncheon and you told your story. And I knew right then that you needed to share this great story with the Remarkable Results Radio podcast listeners. So what I did is I walked up to you and I said, hey, would you please sign your press picture? And you did. And then I went up to you, I gave you my business card and said, sir, and boy, would I love to do an interview with you. And you looked at me and you said, what's a podcast? And I said, I'll explain in a minute. Let's just get together and talk. So here we are. I am honored because you're one of 6 clay design modelers who crafted the original 1964 Ford Mustang. Oh,
I may say, though, there were sometimes 8 or 10, depends, where we were with the design of it. So it was not just 6. Well, could have been 8 or more.
Okay. I can't wait to hear about it. And you have such an interesting story coming over from Italy at such a young age. Tell us about it.
Well, I left this river town north of Venice, Italy. It's a beautiful town, a river town surrounded by the beauty of the Alps and the Adriatic Sea. It was 1952. And in Italy, still things were not economically very good. So the family decided to leave and go to Canada. We could not directly come to the United States because for Italians at that time, there was a quota, a waiting list for 10 years for Italians.
Oh my.
Yes. And you had to have a blood relatives, to come here.
Okay.
So we left, the family, 5 of us went to Windsor, Canada. And our skills there were in woodworking, design. We design and build furniture in Italy with our own shop.
Yeah.
We came from a line of woodworkers. All my ancestry were in woodworkers, and some specialized in harnessing the power of the river. My great-grandfather actually could not read or write, but he could figure out all the gearing and make things move. Anyhow, but we can go for a long time, talk about my life, my first 2 decades in Italy, which were during the war. When the war was ended, I was 14. And so I remember very well. I could tell you many stories, but let's go to...
Let me stop you and let me ask about the story when you saw the B-52s fly overhead on their way to Germany and you saw the P-51 Mustang fighter jet that were protecting the B-52 bombers. That was a great story.
Yes. In 1943, Italy abdicated the war and went on the side of the Allies. The Americans, allies, already were setting up bases in Italy, and they were now really hitting Germany pretty hard. And they would fly over the skies of our town, my town, and they would actually fill the skies with this. They weren't B-52, I forgot where they were, probably 17 or anyhow. They were large bombers flying over our skies, going to Germany, like to say hello to the other guy. Amongst those planes, they were these P-51 Mustangs. They were the one to protect the big bombers from being attacked. And one Sunday afternoon on the way back from Germany, one of the bombers was flying very low, smoking, because he got hit pretty bad. So one brave, actually foolish German flyer went up with a small reconnaissance plane, you know what I mean? Just had an automatic rifle, and he started hitting on the bomber. Well, soon enough, 2 of the P-51 came down from the sky and engaged them and turned them into a ball of fire. But little did I know then that the P-51 would come back into my life many years later.
So you,
P-51.
so you came to Windsor, Canada, and I have relatives that came from the old country that came to Ottawa, actually, to Canada. Seemed to be the easier way to get here. And then you got sick.
Yes, I started developing pain on my left leg and back lower spine. It took 10 months to discover that I had tuberculosis of the bone. Then shortly they put me into a sanitarium where at that time, they cured tuberculosis of the bone by immobilizing the area, which was sacroiliac area, which is the joint of the spine to the pelvis. I was cured with streptomycin and penicillin at that time. I stayed in that body cast for 18 months in a sanitarium in Windsor, Canada. Could not speak very well. I got by.
Okay.
I was already 10 months I'd been in Canada going from doctor to doctor. So, well, what can I say? I wasn't in best hospital. It was taken care of completely by the Canadian government to the point where I got out. For a year, they gave me a salary, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a check every month. And then they helped me find a job. I mean, how can you dream of anything more beautiful than that?
Well, interesting.
But anyhow,
but that's when you discovered your talent.
Yeah, as I was laying in this body cast, I could not turn around. I could move my knees a little bit, yes. I was encouraged to remain, well, I couldn't move anyhow, so I couldn't turn over, like if you want to fall asleep, you find a place to, I couldn't do that. So I resorted to do this. Take the pillow, because I could move my arms, and put it on top of my face and convince myself that I was sleeping on my tummy, that I was laying on that pillow, and I would fall asleep. There were many other inconveniences. I don't want to go into this now, but the hardest part of the 18 months was really retaining my sanity, because the body, after a while, gets adjusted, believe it or not, to be immobilized. We had no air conditioning. So imagine that body cast from below my arms or my knees. I had 4 body casts. And then eventually, when I got surgery, then which was the last cast, they had it on my right leg, I think. They had it all the way down to my foot. So it was even more. Anyhow, there were times where I could not recognize myself in the mirror. And when I mentioned that to the nurses, they took the mirror away. Eventually, they brought it back. But still, I was having a rough time. I was beginning to read books. The first book that I could really understand was The Cane Mutiny by Horman Book. I don't know if you heard of The Cane.
Sure have. Yeah.
They made a movie out of that, too.
Mm-hmm.
There was one day that I don't know what happened, but I found myself carving the profile of Lincoln off a penny on a bar of soap. From there, then people said, why don't you try clay? So I did that. They gave me a book about sculpting. They gave me clay. Now imagine that I was doing all of this by laying the clay on top of my chest, and most of it to look in the mirror because I couldn't see the top of my sculpture. So I had to do it a lot of in reverse.
Well, that had to require an awful lot of talent to do that.
Yes. Well,
wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was desperation, really. And talent is if you work hard enough. I think everybody's got talent. So anyhow, the picture I did was just a small bust, probably half size. And it was a picture were taken and they put it in the Windsor Star, the local paper. There was a sculptress there that saw it, came over and visited me, and she says, you have some talent, and what are you thinking of doing when you get out of the hospital? I said, well, my skills are in woodworking. I suppose I'd go back to that, cabinetry. Well, she said, maybe you should look at car design. And I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, they do full-size clay models of cars. Oh, really? So I said, well, I'll keep that in mind. And when I got out, and it took me a year before I could really look for work, I soon discovered that there were no design studios in Windsor, Canada. They were all in the United States, which was across the river. And of course, I discovered again that I could not go to the United States because I had to wait 10 years. But I also discovered that there was a first preference set up by the U.S. government where you could enter in a shorter time if they felt that you could be of value to the country. So I hired an attorney, actually, an immigration attorney, and he walked me through all that was the process that took 8 months, and had to have permission from Washington, first of all, to qualify for that. So the story goes on, and in 8 months now I am in the United States, and my first job was working for Thanksgiving parade, doing busts for the parade. From there, I went to a engraving company. And one day I was looking out of the window by my workbench, and I looking at this tower. And so one lunch I said, let me just walk over there and see what is that tower, And what I said on the tower is American Motors. I said, oh, they do clay models in there.
I would imagine, yes. Yeah.
And so I walked in and I asked the secretary if I could speak to someone because I wanted to be a clay modeler. And she says, you have an appointment? No, I said, I don't know anybody. So she broke with protocol and called the head person in clay modeling. And his name is Ron Martin.
Okay.
And so he said, I just had a layoff. If I didn't have I said, I would try, because I see you have the desire to learn. So he says, would you mind working in a plaster shop, where we make molds of the models and, from the clay? I said, anything. But he said, my father, George Martin, he is.
No, I love it.
George Martin, he leads the plaster shops at Ford Motor Company Design Center. He says, I'll talk to him. And so I got invited to go to the design center. And I brought some picture of the sculpture that I did after I left the hospital. And he looked at that and he says, well, I actually brought with him two managers of clay modeling department. The Stober's brother, very famous guys. So he looked at my work and they said, what experience do you have in clay modeling cars? I said, none, but I'm willing to learn. Well, they kind of shook their head. He said, well, George, you see what you can do with them. And they left. So George said, I see that you really want to learn. Why don't you start off in the shop with me? And he said, when can you come? Well, I could come tomorrow, but first I should give 2 weeks notice to the shop that I'm working now. He said, fine, when you're ready, give me a call and then you come in. She says, I just couldn't believe it, that Ford Motor Companies, it's this forbidden city, that I was entering. So I went back to the shop and I told the owner, he didn't even let me finish. He says, you have an offer to go and work at a design center for Motor Company, and you give him 2 weeks. He says, take your toolbox. Go now. If you have any problem, you can come back. So that's how I started working. That was 1957, and I was in the shop for a year and a half, and I moved on into the clay modeling department, and they showed me how to make tools because those days you cannot buy modeling tools. We made our own. So that was the first thing. They showed me how to make my tools. So they were very gracious and everything. And then just start working mostly on full-size bodies. And that in those days, because we had no computer or anything, the skill they were sought after were a clay sculptor. They could interpret a sketch and imagine the third dimension and create the theme. Okay, so it was all done by hand. Our tools were a bandsaw, workbench, and a clay oven. And in a measuring device called the bridge, which would roll up and down around the clay model to put information in and also to take information out. And that was the setting for 1960 when we began working on the Mustang, on the 64 Mustang.
So, Giuliano, it was code named Allegro.
What I remember was filling out the cards because we had to put in a time card, and each model we made had a name, had to have a name. And I remember, as I said, Allegro. It was one of the names actually that was ultimately considered amongst Henry Ford for the T-Bird 2. Then there was a Cougar. So they were this series of names.
They even considered Torino as one of the names.
Yes. Yeah. So they, people put in, and there was a chief designer, his name was John Major, that he loved airplanes. And he thought of a P-51 Mustang. And I remember one of the designers, Gib Iverson, who was sketching that. It was a logo, but of course it became to the point where the Mustang really, the name, the Mustang horse, really, that's where the name came from. In a design center, people make proposals of all kinds, but let's just say that the name derived from a horse.
Giuliano, take us inside the design center that you were using hot clay at 120 degrees.
Yes. So the design center for Motor Company was built in the early 50s, and it employed like 1,000 people. And had several studios for different car lines. And 3 of the studios were got into the program of designing this new spirited, young, sporty car. So I work in one studio, then I work in another studio. As a clay sculptor, we move about depending where the need is. Sometimes over time, we move to another studio. So after several weeks of showing models, Mr. Ford, Henry Ford II, said, "I'm sorry, you guys are showing me the same thing over and over again." Well, that's understandable because in a creative world, sometimes you can dry up. You're just so much, and then you can't think of nothing else, So this was the responsibility of the designer. The studio had 2 or 3 designers. And the studio that the Mustang was designed, I think there were 2 designers, a chief designer, 6 to 8 modelers, a layout engineer, they call it, the layout man. So in the studio itself, the door that led into the studio had no name on it. And that's where the Mustang was to be born. And under Joe Oros was the director of the studio. Gail Alderman was the one that did the sketch. They gave the Mustang its identity. So how was the 64 Mustang designed? We had a structure with 4 wheels and wood and foam to get approximately to the shape, size. Points were put in with the clay. Now the clay, we talked about is they call it industrial clay. And it's a base of wax oil. It's a a secret formula. It comes in billets and it's put into an oven with drawers, like a food load. And it was heated up to like 120, sometime more. The first application it needs to be pretty hot and very pliable. So we would add it on with gloves first to get the base. Then when we got closer to getting the design into it, then the temperature would be a bit lower. But regardless, many times you get so excited, you get working, pretty soon you'll find yourself with blisters in your hand, actually, and then the blister bust. And like I said, I'm sure the some of my skin was embedded in that clay. It was for some very exciting times. The way it started, Joe Oros said to Gail Alderman, "I need some fresh sketches, And Gail Alderman said, "I'm really very busy, Joe, I can't do it." Well, if we knew George, or rather even take no for an answer, he said, "I don't care, but You got to do it. So Gail Alderman went home at 11 o'clock at night. He did several sketches in the morning. Joe Oros picked two, and he says, I'll run the passenger side and you run the driver's side. Meaning by running is I'll direct sculptors, with lines and shapes. That's the way it works. Well, that was presented to Lee Iacocca. And Lee Iacocca liked the driver's side. And that's how the design was selected. But I like to say kind of humorous little story where when Iacocca liked something, with his present cigar in his mouth, he would kind of roll it,
Uh-huh.
and his cigar would light up. And then we knew that he liked it.
And he has been called the father of the Mustang.
He was called the father of the Mustang because he stuck his neck out with Ford, and he kept trying several times. And Ford kept saying, no, we just lost a lot of money with the Edsel, and I'm not going to take another chance. But finally, a story goes, sometimes I talk about what I heard, what you hear in there is that what really got him is the name Mustang. And because before they didn't have a name for the project, so he thought, they preferred Thunderbird, T-Bird 2, So anyhow, the model was, we worked, I always like this to say this, that as we work on our knees and our backs, 13 hours a day, maybe more sometimes. Remember, working with Charlie Fennis on the front end, with Gail Alderman on the back end. And I have a documentary I did last year in 2015 where I actually had Gail after 52 years. Yeah, he lives in Tip City, Ohio. He has a museum there. And we went around the Mustang. He has in his museum. And we talk about it. I say, remember this, remember that. And we were 30 years old at that time. And here, I look back and I said, here's one person that came from Rivertown outside Venice as a woodworker. And I'm working in a team with a designer that came from Tip City, and his family had a nursery, farmland.
Right.
And the two extreme points of the world got together and worked on this world icon. I think it's kind of cute to talk about that.
Hey, it's no secret. We're facing a technician shortage, and Napa Auto Care has a solution with the Napa Auto Care Apprentice Program. The program was pioneered by one of our own. Pete McNeil and Master Technician Jeg Sorensen from McNeil's Auto Care in Sandy, Utah, realized that the problem of not having technicians available for hire was not going to solve itself and decided to take action and look at a different audience of individuals available for hire. A focus was put on younger individuals with the right passion, desire, and attitude to work in the automotive repair industry. Jake and Pete sought after these individuals and developed a technician apprentice program to give them the training needed to become a successful technician in today's world. The Napa Auto Care Apprentice Program includes a comprehensive 9-stage curriculum that includes a variety of types of training, and they are classroom training videos exclusive to the apprentice program. Now, these videos provide in-depth training from a successful master technician. Also, Autotech classes with instructor-led courses offered through Napa Autotech and Autotech e-learning. This web-based e-learning is designed to target specific training topics. And finally, hands-on learning. The apprentice will apply the skills gained from the classroom training videos, Autotech instructor-led training, and Autotech e-learnings in the shop with the guidance of a mentor. The apprentice program curriculum is competency-based, meaning an apprentice can move through each stage at a pace that best suits them. Most apprentices complete the program within 2 years. Upon completion, apprentices will have earned ASE G1, A4, A5, and AC certifications, adding industry validation to the skills an apprentice acquires. Look, having an apprentice in your shop will ultimately benefit your bottom line as they advance through the program. And in most cases, as the apprentice develops their skill set producing billable hours, you'll begin to see a growth in your gross profit by stage 5. One of the largest barriers to entry for individuals looking to enter the automotive repair industry is the cost of tools. Now, keep your apprentice motivated with an apprentice toolkit. Now, Napa Auto Care has worked with our supplying partners to offer an exclusive comprehensive tool set, including a 4-drawer tool cart for all registered apprentices. Hey, to learn more, members can visit member.napaautocare.com. I love that documentary, Giuliano, where you and Gail Halderman were talking, and you were in the back of the car and you were talking about the taillights. That is just classic how stuff comes together. Wow, that was just great.
Yeah, you're right.
That was great. So anyway, is part of the sculpture's mission is to be sure that you watched, the overall length and the width of the car and the headroom. I mean, were you guys working on making sure that the dimensions that the engineers wanted came out in this final design?
Of course, that's primary. You can design, you can do a sketch and make it look very glamorous. But when you hit reality, then realities are the engine. I call it the horse color, where the radiator is.
Yeah.
So we had to put dowels to indicate that point in the clay. Then we have, of course, we call up, let's say the roof, we had the cowl was because the cowl is a very vital point. It's at the bottom of the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from help me out, the car, not the Fox, but okay, the Falcon.
Oh, Falcon? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was based on the second generation of the Falcon, right?
Yeah, and that's why we were able to manufacture that in 18 months. Like even heard I call kind of Jay Leno show say, well, it was a facelift.
A facelift of the Falcon. That is a great line.
Yeah, he said, I heard him say that. Not too long.
And that car sold 1 million units in 18 months when it was released.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they sold something 300,000 or so by just the advertisement of it.
Wow.
That's the other great part of the program, the ability to sell what you make. And they hit every possible media. I think they had a picture of it in 3 different major magazines at the same time. Time Magazine, Life, and so on, So that was part of the Lia Coca expertise. It's, marketing, selling, and he was a great salesman. So when we talk about him, with the father of the Mustang, is because without him, we would have not had. Because he put his job on the line. If the thing did not sell, well, Mr. Ford, say goodbye. You wasted me a lot of money.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, that car was introduced at the World's Fair 1964 in April in New York.
Yes.
And that's why it was the 1964 and a half model. That's what.
Yeah, I always call it 64.
Yeah.
It's 64 and a half. It's another coup there because usually the new models are introduced in the fall. And this one was introduced in the spring, and there was no one else introducing their models, so they got full attention.
How proud you must be to be out there. 52 years, the car's still in production. You're going to Mustang clubs. You're speaking everywhere at 84 and a half years old. Wow. Talk about reinventing yourself with something to be so proud about.
Yeah, it's really, I rediscovered the Mustang on the 50th anniversary when I was honored with the Mustang Hero with Ford and a local Mustang club had a banquet honoring designers and engineers that worked in the 50 years of a Mustang. So I was there right at the very beginning. And after the banquet, we had signing anything that people were about 500. I signed documents and things for about 2.5 hours.
Good for you.
Very, very, people would say, how did you do it? What was it like in that studio? Obviously, I didn't have much time to, go into details. There's a long line of people.
Yeah.
So that gave me the idea to do a documentary. And then during the documentary, I discovered the passion for this machine. The 64 Mustang is now, there are clubs around the world. There are 180 or so in the United States. There are many family that I met. Some had one for each member. They brought it over to one of the car shows, and they said, "Oh my God, we even carted one over because we didn't want to drive it for you to sign." And so after I was in Florida at the time, and the many car shows every week, more time than once a week. And I kept signing and signing and signing. And now when I go to car show, they open the hood and I see my signature all over the place.
And, I love the documentary where you signed the dashboard of a woman's car. That was just classic.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you want to keep this in it, but last summer here at the World Headquarters, they had 1,000 Mustang, big show. And they play my song there, because I wrote a song I call Mustang Man.
Yeah.
I wrote the lyric, and then I had Billy Mack with the music in his group. And then, they came over and I signed autographs 2 hours in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. I said, this is such a passion, but it's even more than that. Because little kids, they say, Mustang Man, here, sign my T-shirt. And one lady said, "Gee, sign my chest over here." So I said,
it's great.
And it goes on and on. I mean, I was at the groundbreaking ceremony in Concord, North Carolina, of the Mustang Owners Museum.
Yeah,
the groundbreaking ceremony. I was the keynote speaker there, and I brought some DVDs and CDs. Trying to offset my cost. They bought everything. It was second day, again, at the ground, one guy came to me, said, "Do you have anything else I can buy from you?" I no, I don't. He says, "How about your hat?" So he bought the hat right off my head. And he said, "Sign it, and I'm going to do a stainless steel holder, put it on my IP, and it'll be there to every car show that I go." Then everybody came over and had their tags signed. And pretty soon, all these tags all around the lot, it's a 4-acre lot. And it was very emotional to see my signature hanging from all these people's necks.
So interesting. One of the things that I was impressed about you when we had our pre-call, when we spent a whole bunch of time together, your message of overcoming obstacles and in the creation of this world icon, having had the tuberculosis of the bone and, sculpting in the bar of soap, and then having the tenacity to say, what's that tower over there, and to create your own opportunities, and now to be so much a part of this incredible movement.
Yeah, at this time in my life, I look at, for the last year or 6 months, it's been accelerating a lot, the intro in my story. The Mustang is a great story. But then people, after hearing me, they say, "What about your story? It's so inspirational. It should be a movie." Yeah, I said, I wish,
It is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I want to rewind a little bit about what else you did with Ford. I believe you worked on the GT40?
Oh, yes. GT40. Ford Motor Company was interested to buy Ferrari. And because Ferrari was in financial problem, and they were actively going through the process. I remember seeing some designer doing the logos of Ferrari Ford, together. So I came down to the point that now it's time to sign the contract. And according to someone that was there for me, what happened is that Ferrari just came in and then looked at everybody and walked out. He changed his mind. And then this man, Henry Ford II, said, "Well, let's see, we have the ability to really compete with Ferrari." And so we started with the clay model, and I worked a lot on the front end of it with the Jean Bourdonnais. directly. He was the vice president of design. And he stood there by the hour and telling me, move this way. And he said, "What? I never saw a sketch." He said, we had dimension to hold. And I remember working on my back to model the underpaint. It was a great experience seeing that model go out of there. And I think I've gone to some shop in California, and they produced several. And they went to Le Mans, and they beat the Ferrari 4 times.
From the homeland. They beat a car from the homeland.
Yeah.
Wow. Great story. Now, do people know why they call it the GT40? The 40 stands for what?
There's 40 inches off the ground. So they give that, GT40. And ultimately, Ford, when I had some rough time, had to sell the name. And so 50 years later, they did a new GT. They call it, you can't call it GT40, but they call it Ford GT. They went back to Le Mans and beat Ferrari again.
Great story.
50 years later.
So you retired from Ford, I believe, after 31 years, and then you created your own studio?
Oh, no, I never had a studio. When I left Ford, I retired from Ford in 1988. Things were changing in car design and developing the concepts, So I started even there. First, another story that before I left, I like to talk about. In 85, Design Center, designers were looking at designing the car in the computer.
Right.
So I thought that, it was time to look at how we would be making models to parallel the technology. And I convinced the management that we should have a separate studio where a small group of people dedicated to explore new way in model making and car design, away from the time constraint, because the project had to be done a certain time.
Right.
But this was just to explore. We did a lot of good work there with the studio we called 2000X. And incidentally, that's where they designed the computer, the GT, that just beat the Ferrari in that studio. Isn't that something?
Is that right?
Yeah, in that studio, they designed it in there. So anyhow, in that studio, my responsibility was to develop new techniques in model making. And I thought of a way to do it with the computer, a liquid polymer, and an ultraviolet light. And I called it at that time liquid to solid. And I still have the agendas in my archives. And at one point then I was told, this idea is too wild. You get nothing but negative results. Just quit on it. Well, I went underground and I kept talking to different universities about the idea. And I made a video, which I have on my website. It was like, a great box, full size, I had in mind, that I would take the data from the computer, and through the fusion or solidification of the liquid polymer, I would create a model just for review, And so I sent this to University of Ottawa, and so I got a call back from them, and it says, "You don't know what you have done. You have invented a technology that's been patented by 3D System in San Rafael, California." It was bittersweet, but I said, "Man, I was right, wasn't I?" The attorney Ford didn't think that it was possible. Right now, that technology is used in the International Spaceship, and I like to find that attorney and send him up there.
Oh, that's funny. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me what other vehicles you worked on or with other car companies.
Well, to finish up at Ford first,
okay,
the Mustang GTP was a race car.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with Jack Roush at the University of Maryland wind tunnel facility.
Okay.
And we reconnected with him, and he has that model in his museum in Livonia. And that's where I did the interview with him, which is in my documentary.
Great documentary.
Thank you. And so I left Ford in 88. I was 56. I had a lot of energy left and a lot of ideas. But soon I found out that without the Ford over my head, doors were not opening that easy. I just look at engineering now, modeling, body engineering, because all the designs, the original concepts are done within the company. So there's no way that I could do that outside. I had no studio or anything. I formed a company called Concepts International, and I had no facility and no employees. My goal was to use my ideas and materialize them with other people's facility. In other words, I would act as a supplier, and that's what I did. My first job was to quote on the first generation of the Dodge Ram, the truck. And I got the job from Jeep and Truck Chrysler. It was Chrysler at that time. That I bid against some of the large companies around the Detroit metro area. They quoted to do the job 3 months. I did it in 3.5 weeks. And that got me rolling. And for the following 20 years, I did so many models, for wind tunnel models, ergonomic models, so many in the development of the car, where I could say that I could run a project from a clay concept all the way to engineering for manufacturing. I have that knowledge because I did it for a total of 50 years now. Then. And during that time up to Ford, I did work for several major companies in Italy and in Germany and Korea, and with no facility and no employees. So I'm proud of that.
Very good. Wow.
I had no overhead and no payroll.
What a great story. It's almost, they say the magic of the Mustang is young, spirited, joyful, a sense of freedom. And you seem to embody all of that.
Well, thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. And I enjoy what I'm doing now. I form another company called Icon Productions. And my goal is to inspire, inform, and entertain. And the thing that I'm thinking of doing now is to, as I just did one in the penitentiary to the inmates, and they were very inspired. As a matter of fact, one of the inmates did a portrait of me.
Well, look, you sent me that copy, and it was so well done. Could we put that on your show notes page on my website?
Sure. If you think it's good, you're fine.
Well, it's not like it's good. I think it's all part of the story. And part of the story is that you're part of the fabric of the American life when it comes to cars.
But I don't know if we have enough time here.
No, please go ahead. I'm just so much enjoying this.
So that was not too long ago. I was sitting in my car. I was thinking, people find my story inspirational. Who could I help? And it came to me, the inmates that are trained to go out in life again and rebuild their life. And I thought maybe my story could inspire them when they go out not to give up, because look what I did with a bar of soap and a body cast, And if you're healthy and walk around, you can certainly do good with your life. So I just Googled the Jackson Penitentiary, and I saw the name. It says warden. I called. He answered the phone, and I told him what I would like to do, and he says, "This is incredible." He says, "You work on the original Mustang?" I said, "Yes." Well, he says, "I have 2 Mustang," and then we start, conversing. He said, "I'm going to do this. I want you to come in and talk to the inmates about your life." He says, I never answered the phone. This time I answered the phone. To me, I believe in the force of destiny. I believe that also if you meet an obstacle, it can be an opportunity to do something else. Don't give up, because that could be just a change of direction.
Well, that's the spirit. Yeah, that's the spirit of your message.
Yeah, I just, sometimes it could be a blessing. When I was in that body cast, for example, I did not have TV. Had I had TV, I probably would have never carved that bar of soap.
Great point.
Right?
Great point.
Don't fret over sometimes things are uncomfortable. Maybe it's a sign that an opportunity is coming.
You have a great quote. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to ask you how it inspired you. Your great quote is, "Where the spirit is young, There is no calendar.
Well, it probably came, these things come to me sometimes. I don't know why, but but I can only say that at my age, a lot of people, they talk about dying, and they look at that calendar. How much time do I have left?
Yeah.
So they're actually dying before they're dead. They're killing their own spirit. So I thought, if you keep your spirit young and you want to live every moment you have and inspire other people, but mostly it's in answer to your question. I said, if the spirit is young, okay, there is no calendar, meaning, in itself is understandable that if you look at the calendar every day, it brings you down.
Yeah.
So just don't look. Let's assume that we never had a calendar. We never would know how old we were.
That's right.
Knowing that you're 80, 90, 100, okay. So, oh my God, it brings you down, I believe. So keep the spirit young and want to live every moment.
Well,
there's a calendar.
Giuliano, for you, 80s is the new 60.
Oh, I hope so.
Oh, man. Okay, so we were on the phone. We had just a wonderful opportunity to chat, in our pre-call. And you said, hey, Carm, I have a 10-year business plan. And I just was rocked by that. So share with our listeners what you want to do in the next 10 years.
Yes, I talked about doing a film called The Room Above the Tavern. And that's where I was born, in tavern, the family tavern. A film that would be about my life, but also, the story of the Mustang, my story involvement. I laid it out and I requested a Ford Motor Company licensing department. Their answer was, if you are going to do a film about your life, where it includes a Mustang, then you can use the Ford logo and the Mustang logo free, and anything else you need.
Wow.
To do a film the way I want to do it, it's not a documentary. It's a living document. I want to begin with remodeling the 64 Mustang.
What a great concept. I love that.
And have actors, like personating me and others.
Yeah.
And really show, and of course, they use certain portion of it. The blood and sweat, intrigue, and all the excitement that went into creating that. Because I lived with it and I can remember every moment of it. So that would be the goal, is to start from there and then cut off my life story here or there. I did this or did that,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. But I want to do a film where the distribution is possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it has to be done by a large company where they already have distribution in place. So I'm hoping that by telling my story over and over again to many different people, that someone might say, no, let's talk. Let's see what we can do with your story and go from there. That's my hope. The other hope would be to do a musical about the Mustang, a Broadway musical.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're a songwriter, so you can help there.
Well, I wrote the lyric, to one song.
I know. But, when you told me that, and then I discovered you have a music room in your home and you love to showcase singers.
Yes.
And I heard this great opera being sung at your home. I realized where the connection to doing a Broadway musical was.
Yeah. Well, here's too. So this weekend here, this Saturday, is November 19th, 2000. I'm featuring a friend of mine that I work with at Ford Motor Company, and he's a designer, and he just loves to sing. And recently he's been taking lessons from a world-renowned mezzo-soprano, Irina Mishura, and she will be here also, and a couple other artists. So I'm just my friends, family, and we have this around the holidays. So he will be singing his beautiful arias and Neapolitan songs. But to open the evening during the cocktail hour, I'm having a couple dancing the Argentine tango. They will do 2 numbers and they are the 2016 U.S. champions. They will come here early.
You have connections to the arts. Amazing.
Got the warden there that he says he will, with a picture he took, and do an article and then pass it along at the different penitentiary in Michigan. He gave me an award, which I don't know if you could see it. It comes from the governor. It's about it's in leadership, honor him for leadership.
Excellent.
So with that, I would like to, see if I can interest other people, other penitentiary. And so I admitted this lady, this Mustanger, I call her. She's very much interested in what I'm doing. And so I found her. She's also a writer. And so here's the idea. How do I continue to inspire people and help people? And when I help people, I also help myself. I filled my life, all the way to the end.
Right.
By making people feel good and helping. I can't think of anything else to do now. So with that in mind, I thought about doing my talk to a VA hospital.
What a great idea.
VA hospital. And with that in mind, I said, why not go through the country and do this? And so this lady friend of mine suggested, what about Route 66? So she has now got a lineup of all the hospital along Route 66, and then hidden Mustang clubs along the way, and the penitentiary on the way. Take about maybe 6 weeks.
Wow.
And ultimately, Miss Icoca would let me say hello to him to end the trip.
Well, that would be great. Now, I guess all you need is a sponsor. You need some money to make it all happen. But here's your message is overcoming obstacles.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, exactly. And I lived through it. I believe in the force of destiny. I think if you try hard enough, it'll come your way. And sometimes, look what happened just the other day here. I had this couple that was going to do, a friend of mine, going to do the tango thing for my party.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy's mother died. And he said, I'm sorry, obviously I can't do it. So I started hitting I started Google here, there. And I hit one that's around here in Utica, Michigan. It's the dance studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her my position. I said, I got people coming and now I don't have the dancers. So can you help me out? And I told her about, that I had someone, but his mother died. Oh, she says, I know the guy. I'm just going to his mother's funeral right now. I said, this is the force of destiny again, because how can it be? And she says, my daughter and her husband they took the U.S. champion in Argentine tango, and they canceled 2 of their lessons to come to my party.
Oh, boy. See, it's fate. If you didn't make that call, if you didn't have the drive inside of you to do, to go to the next step, you would have just given up on it. And that's what you're about. Now, I've got got this idea. Now, if everyone who bought a Mustang in the last 52 years would send you $1, you could make your film, you could do your Broadway musical, and you could do Route 66.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be fantastic, but how do we set that up? I don't know.
I know. Well, listen, there's all kinds of programs on the internet that would that are funding mechanisms.
Are they?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I want to talk to you about that off the air. I really do. And boy, we have spent so much time together working on our pre-call and then hooking up, making sure the technology worked. You're a pretty good geek. I have to tell you that, Giuliano. You have multiple computers in the house. You know what you're doing, and be able to hook up like we did here. We're doing a video. We're doing the audio. This is great.
But to me, I met you in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
There's another force of destiny there, believe me.
It is. I'm so happy to have met you. We're both Italian, and I think that was probably the original connection that made it happen.
Yes, but we're both Americans. So
we're both, but the podcasting is about telling stories. And when I heard you tell your story, and then you agreed to come on and tell yours, there are so many people that are going to hear this. Now, I would say that just think of the people that are listening to this that own a Mustang and didn't realize the background and what it takes to build such an icon that it is. And hats off to you for all that you've done for the car industry and all that you're planning on doing.
Well, yes. What I did then, it was, I was part of that team. Of course, I was valued for my skills in developing a theme in clay, but that just up about, and I was paid for that. It was part of my job.
Yeah.
But now, the last year, I would say, after I was made Mustang Hero, it changed my life. It made me think, I said, what do I do? Do I just sit around and go to parties, do this and that, eat, be like a food processor or something, Yes, I want to be. Then I discovered that the enthusiasm for this machine and how happy people were to line up and get my name. I said, I have something here that people enjoy.
Yeah.
And I want to share it. And in the process of making people enjoy themselves, I enjoy myself too.
Yeah.
I like to see people succeed. I look at Irina Mishura. She is now retired. She came from Russia. There's another story there. You probably sometime could talk to her, how she became a world-renowned mezzo-soprano with Pavarotti, Domingo, and all those people. And now she is transferring her talent to my friend Giuseppe Di Lena. And I never heard him sing so beautifully.
Yeah.
And I'm going to videotape so that you can hear. So here there's some woman that now is transferring her knowledge to someone else and getting enormous enjoyment to see her knowledge live into another person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
great.
My final goal is really talk about my message. And my granddaughter said, that she came with me and my son to the penitentiary, she was there, and how proud she is to tell my story. And I think, she got to know her grandfather now a lot more than before. And she talks about me, and, it creates a joyful moment when you see and you hear your granddaughter say that. Right?
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show. I was inspired. I know our listeners are. And I guess, how can I sum it up to say that you're just a young, spirited, and joyful person at 84 that had their hands and their blood and their sweat and their tears in the original design of the Mustang. Wow.
Thank you. And you can say, there are no calendars around my house.
That's right. Where the spirit is young, there is no calendar. And we should all grow up to be as spirited and as young as you are.
But before you go 1 second.
Yeah.
The Route 66.
Yeah.
My dream would be to take off from the Automotive Hall of Fame here in Detroit and go along the route and have people join me for short times as a caravan of Mustang going to the VA hospital.
Wow.
Can you imagine that alongside?
So in each city, you'd have the caravan of Mustang owners, what a great idea. Well, this is a movement, and I don't doubt
But what I need, Carm, is your advice and other people's advice, how to organize, because would be quite a trip,
Yeah, it sure would be.
I left somebody drive, with me and all that, but it takes some effort to put this together and potentially make people aware in advance that, I'm coming through with this idea and what I'm doing. I need to organize that.
By the way, do you own any Mustangs?
Yeah, I have the anniversary Mustang, and the 5.0 is a beast.
And then the wild horse. I can't even find an end to this podcast. It's so interesting. I love it. Did you ever meet Carroll Shelby?
Yes, I did. When he was inducted at the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I did work on the Mustangs. The Shelby Mustangs, addition to it, were done at the Design Center for Motor Company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the concept, design standard wanted to control, what they would look like. So I remember working in certain addition for Shelby's cars.
And again, did you ever meet Steve McQueen?
No, I wish I could. I met Tom Yeager.
Okay.
He was friendly with him and Paul Newman. They were the drivers. And Tom Yeager beat the Corvette on the 65 Mustang R, they call it, So it's, I didn't meet.
Well, we could go on, and maybe we need to do part 2 one of these days, but otherwise, thank you just so much for being here.
Well, I know, I always say the last moment, but one more. Okay. Imagine this, as I traveled to Route 66. At one point in the other, we could do a podcast from one of the areas along the route.
What a great idea.
Maybe when I do my talk to the patients there.
Great idea. Just a great idea. Count me in. I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you. Let's
all right. Well, I really want to say I appreciate you wanting to do this for me, because if you do it for me, you will be doing it for many other people.
And I thank you very much.
Okay, this is final. Thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye. See you soon.